So, you find yourself on the UnrealEntGaming channel. How fortunate for you. I, Lord Frieza, will spare your life as long as you subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, don't forget to become a member of UnrealEntGaming's Patreon for tons of exclusive content to early access media and much more. Do it now, or else.
With our heroes, the Supreme Kai, Goku, and Glorio now being joined by an additional team member that goes by the name of Pansy having to continue their adventure and having to get down to the bottom of finding King Gomah's castle, their quest within the Demon Realm seems to continue as I want to welcome you all to my Dragon Ball Daima anime episode number 6 review. And right from the beginning, what I will go as far as to say is that this episode had done a terrific job in building up the tension surrounding Glorio's character, and I'm going to explain a little later as to why, but once more early on, similar to previous episodes, kind of getting that Dragon Ball GT early Dragon Ball feel of our heroes having to traverse throughout the Demon Realm and having to get down to the bottom of not only going deeper into their exposition of learning more about the Tamagamis and of course the original Dragon Balls, of course learning about new fusion methods and many other things, but we also come to find out several different things within this episode that I think is very intriguing, especially with Glorio working for Arinsu. So more on that a little later on, but what I think was cool about this, especially early on from the beginning, outside of even going as far as speaking of the Supreme Kai, we actually got to see, I think for the first time, how the Supreme Kai was born, and I think that it's very intriguing because if my memory serves me correct, the Kaioshin are born from the Shinjin trees, right? Because of course there is a split between Kaioshin, which are supposed to be like evil Kaioshin, and regular Supreme Kais. So I think to see the Supreme Kai's birth, although a little weird because we've come to grow and know of the Supreme Kai for who he is, really turned out to be a little weird to see him as an infant, as a little baby, you know, but I think it was pretty cool to see as to where he came from because it goes on to establish further lore as to what Toriyama had planned for these Kaioshin, maybe even Kaioshin. So I think that was a little intriguing to see, but man, early on in the beginning, was it boring because really nothing happens, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing in between that kind of places the stakes at their highest, or at least not towards the very ending of this episode. So a lot of these episodes are like a little bit of mixtures between exposition and brief combat, which I'm really hoping that the combat picks up later on because with the way they've been setting everything up, the Tamagamis do look as though they're going to be top dogs to be going up against our heroes. And hell, even if they end up deciding to have King Gomah be a part of all of this in terms of having him fight, or even Degasu, then great. I'm hoping to see more of that because the action later on in this episode was really solid, but in the beginning not so much, especially if you're trying to get people into the show. And with Pansy going on to explain how Majins are supposed to have like these really special unique traits about them, or at least they are able to possess these magical abilities, really wasn't something that we didn't really know of before, because we know that especially when looking at Majins like Majin Buu has a plethora of magical abilities that he uses, or at least somewhere deep within him I'm pretty sure that Majin Buu possesses a vast arsenal of magical abilities that he can go as far as to use. So everything that Pansy had went as far as to explain to Goku kind of was a little iffy because we knew about that before. But even aside from that itself, I really get this feeling after seeing all of these new villains be introduced or at least debut within this show. Do I only think that they're all fodder to begin with? Because in this episode we actually got to see a gigantic, I don't know how to describe him, like a minotaur like enemy just suddenly appear, right? And at first glance you kind of get this idea that he's fearsome, that he's actually going to be very powerful, but in reality he turns out to be a little bit of a softie, which kind of gives me the implication that he's complete cheeks to begin with, because even later on after Goku becomes a Super Saiyan, yes he does, this Minotaur-like character is ultimately besides himself because he's never seen someone like Goku ever use or wield such a transformation before, which again goes as far as to establish the fact that all of these villains are supremely below Buu's level from the Buu saga. So it's a little disappointing to see how there's not really many villains outside of the ones that we know of that are in secret, like the Tamagamis, Gomah, and Degasu, that are going to be posing any sort of credible possible threat to our heroes, or at least not yet, you know what I mean? So the Minotaur reminded me of Mr. Satan, like kind of like a gag-like Minotaur-like character, you know? He really didn't do much for the episode itself. I mean, credit where credit is due, he looked very intimidating, he looked very badass, I guess you could say, from his overall design, but by the end of it, once we got to see what we saw later on in the episode, then you ultimately come to realize that once again, this is just another fodder character. You have to call a spade here, you know? So the overall episode, I think for me, was beginning to kind of sidetrack me a little bit. It was beginning to kind of dwindle my interest down little by little until things began to pick up later on. But for the most part, early on, after seeing everyone kind of feast upon their dinner and stumbling upon the Minotaur, even prior with Pansy having to elaborate on the overall implementation of what a Majin can do in terms of using specific magical techniques and abilities, everything I think was all right until we got to where we got to. But even then, above all else, what I really want to talk about right now is the Glorio and Goku fight. And man, does Dragon Ball Daima deliver in the aspects of animation, in the aspects of art, in the aspects of sound design, in hell, even the aspects of execution, because I'm really hoping that whenever Toei Animation decides to gather all their eggs and put it in one basket and finally animate the moral arc from Dragon Ball Super, then I firmly stand behind the overall position that this is what Moro should look like. I think that with the overall execution behind Goku's initial Super Saiyan transformation, which looked fantastic by the way, including the fact that even when Goku went as far as to completely negate one of Glorio's best attacks, to completely even go as far as to go behind him, and only from that point forcing Glorio to forfeit, do I think was a really good and smart idea, because again, everything takes place prior to Battle of Gods. All of these villains and characters thus far really aren't even Majin Buu level to begin with, right? And if this is supposed to take place after the events of Kid Buu, which it does, then realistically speaking, outside of maybe the Tamagamis, really nobody is going to be on Goku or Vegeta or Gohan's level to begin with, right? But what I really enjoyed about this overall battle, even though once again it was very brief, was just seeing the overall execution behind it, the fluidity. It didn't look clunky, it didn't really look out of place like Super did from time to time, you know? And even after having to see this little tidbit, did it only give me so much more hope for the future, because I mean, not for nothing, for me, I would love to see a Shintani like kind of esque Broly kind of vibe going to Moro, you know? Because hell, even now I'm still under the impression, in my own opinion, that Dragon Ball Super Broly is aesthetically the best looking Dragon Ball Super series thus far. But if they were to ever go with anything Daima related in terms of aesthetics, then that is a green light for me, because everything about Glorio and Goku I think looked really good, even to the point where Glorio had gone as far as to use like some weird electric whip to whip Goku's power pole out of his hand, you know? It was, I think, very good, and I think that this is what's needed, especially moving forward in Daima, because not for nothing, if we're calling a spade here, then this show really has divided a lot of fans, because some fans think that this is peak and other fans think that this is boring. So I can see on one hand on why a lot of people are saying that this is boring, because of course, who really cares about Pansy? She just got introduced, you know? Really nobody ever cares about the Supreme Kai to begin with. He wasn't relevant since the Majin Buu saga. Goku's a little different on the other hand, but I think now there's going to be more interest garnered in Glorio since he is up to something sinister behind the scenes, you know? Whereas on the other hand, there are a collective group of people that think that this is absolute peak, even better than OG Dragon Ball, which I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I strongly disagree with this being the peak of Dragon Ball, because OG Dragon Ball and Z to me are peak, but we're all entitled to our overall opinions, right? So Dragon Ball Daima thus far, what I think that it needs to do is kind of garner and keep that collective with its overall fight choreography usage, its overall aesthetics, because again, since episode 1, this entire show has looked great from the beginning, and even the fights themselves, including this one, were really good, especially after Goku went Super Saiyan and seeing him as a Super Saiyan for the first time here, because of course, if you guys remember in the previous episode, we really didn't get to see much of Super Saiyan Goku to begin with, because I mean, he just simply powered up, blew everybody away, and then reverted back down to base, you know? But this was really good. I would say this was a lot better than episode 5 and maybe even episode 4. So thus far, I am very intrigued to see where they go with Glorio, because I really do hope that they don't backtrack and have Glorio kind of join Goku's team, because I think that by the end of it, we need more villains, right? We need more credible villains to give purpose to our heroes. So solid episode, not so much in the beginning, but towards the middle and the end it was. But even now, by the end of all of this, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below about how you guys felt about Dragon Ball Daima episode 6, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I think what saved Daima for me, at least for the most part, is seeing how Glorio Glorio really isn't the guy that we thought that he was from the very beginning, or at least not from what a lot of people had suspected for him to be either a good guy or a neutral guy. He actually turns out to be working for Arinsu, so I think that overall dynamic itself adds a little bit of spice to the overall story because, I mean, thus far 6 episodes in, with the exception of a few fights here and there, it's just been exposition after exposition, and not that there's anything wrong with that because I do firmly believe that they're building up towards a big battle either with Gomah or of course with Glorio, maybe even with Degasu. But now that we're 6 episodes in, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts down below on how you guys felt about Dragon Ball Daima episode 6. So again, I want to thank you all so much for stopping on by. Thank you all so much for your time, to which once more, if you also just so happen to be new to this channel, then I do encourage for you guys to head on over and smash that subscribe button, as well as also making sure to give this video a big fat thumbs up by smashing that like button down below. Tune back in for more, and with all that being said, I want to thank you all so much for your time, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy, everybody, and have a great day. Peace.
Hello. Did you know that you can stay up to date with the latest Dragon Ball content by simply subscribing to UnrealEntGaming?
Also, don't forget to follow on these social media platforms, you sexy son of a bitch.
Roshi.
Silent Cell, me and the fans are having a moment. That's right. I know what you want. Extra long, thick Dragon Ball content. Quality reviews with flawless editing. Yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you? You dirty bitch.
Roshi, the fuck?
God damn it, I need them to subscribe, Cell.
And we're demonetized.
Yeah, screw it. Let's cut to the video.